we're going to talk to Ted in Washington. Him wants to talk about the history of gender medicine and why it's not based in science. Oops, sorry, I didn't put down this banner. So Ted, you are live on the line with Arden and Lux. Let's get into it.
How's it going, guys? Good to talk to you again. So, yeah, I think I think gender ideology is primarily a philosophical movement and a linguistic movement. And I think it's seeking to redefine what men and women means, but I don't think that it's based in any sort of scientific rigor. Like it goes back to Simone de Beauvoir, Judith Butler, who said stuff like, a woman becomes a woman, she's not born a woman. And then that kind of inspired Butler. And then you also have a lot of people like John Money. I don't know if you know his story, but he was pretty messed up. So I think there's a lot of bad actors in it, and it's not so scientific.
Okay, so sorry, there's like 18 layers there. I'm trying to decide what is the best path to peel through first. So you've said that you think gender ideology is primarily a philosophical movement trying to redefine men and women, and you don't think that is based in scientific rigor, the definitions of man and women. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think if you take away the biological definition of man and woman, which is the scientific one, then you're left with sort of a poetic definition of man and woman, which could be based on identity or based on social roles. And I don't think those hold up to the same scientific rigor that biology does.
So I'm going to push back on that because I don't think that having biology in a definition makes it scientific. We're talking about defining words, putting things in groups and categories, set theory. That is definitely a philosophical thing that is happening, right? So I would probably agree to a certain extent with what you're saying, that defining man and woman is a philosophical effort, but that is completely removed from the very scientifically rooted foundation of gender affirming care, which is like very established in science. But I would agree that defining words is a philosophical task, not a scientific one.
Right. So you would agree that like saying man means biological male, why don't you think that's the scientific definition? Like,
there is no scientific definition of man or woman, unless you are asking about sociology, which is a type of academic study that uses scientific methods to come to conclusions about populations of people. Like sociology and psychology are both relevant sciences that have a lot to say on the topic of like what is a man and what is a woman. But like as far as biology, there is no definition of man or woman. There are definitions of male and female, which are non-discrete categories, bimodally distributed. So yeah, I like there is no biological definition of man and woman. That is a social definition.
I would also say that even if it were a biological definition, right, using biology to decide where you draw the lines on a category doesn't make it scientific. That is still you subjectively deciding the people in this category, I think philosophically, are described by these biological traits. Like that is still a philosophical effort, even if you're using biology to make some sort of determination there.
Okay, yeah, I can agree with that. But I know you guys, we probably disagree on this about whether gender medicine is scientifically backed. I know a lot of you guys don't like the Cass report, but
it's not that I don't like it.
You guys know
it's scientifically poor.
I've read the Yale thing. Well, there's some evidence that it's not. Like the Cass removed a lot of the studies that people say, well, she removed all the pro-trans studies. That's because those had high dropouts. They had small sample sizes. They didn't follow up on a long-term basis. So they weren't super strong studies. That's the thing.
So here's a couple of thoughts on that. I think it's fair to say that there are probably some studies that were removed that I would agree are weak in their evidentiary weight. However, there's multiple issues that I see with this route, right? One of them is, first of all, some of the studies that she excluded, she said they didn't have a good enough follow-up time, but there was follow-up times of like 6 or 7 years. And so it's kind of absurd to propose that it would have been just after that point that's when all the regret would have popped up, but we just didn't get the chance to see it. It's very silly.
Yeah, almost a decade.
But like, sure. But the other issue I think is that if we want to complain about the quality of evidence behind a lot of care that's given in medicine today, I am open to that conversation. Issue I see is that people like Hillary Cass and lots of people who really like the Cass report unfairly hold trans healthcare to a standard where it needs an extremely high bar of evidence that is not held for some very uncontroversial, like universally applied standards for other types of medicine. Because it is extremely difficult to conduct ethical studies on healthcare, specifically in children. I realized that she's not exclusively asking for like double-blind placebo trials, right? But that is a thing a lot of people on the right who don't understand medicine say, why are we not getting double-blind placebo? And it's like, well, because when there is an established standard of care, it is considered unethical to withhold that care to try to get this like theoretical scientific gold standard. And in many cases, actually comparing to the current standard of care is it better informs the quality of the care that we're going to get with this whatever hypothetical new treatment. So I would agree that there are some studies in trans healthcare that are not as strong as we might want them to be, but that is not unique to trans healthcare. That is a massive problem in medicine in general. There was actually a great study. I don't have the numbers on hand. I had them in my talk that I did, but it's like over 50% of commonplace medical like standards of care are considered poor quality evidence nowadays.
But the difference is like trans healthcare, it's based on something that hasn't even been proven. Like nobody's proven gender identity has any like actual basis in reality. It's purely
By that measurement, no one has proven that depression exists, though, because we diagnose depression based on people's self-reported activities of daily living and their subjective distress. So, like, are you just also of the opinion that the entire field of psychology is bunk? The entire field of psychiatry is bunk?
Yeah, I am skeptical of those fields, but the difference between the treatments for depression and the treatments for gender dysphoria, antidepressants don't permanently cut off healthy body parts. They don't sterilize and remove fertility. So there's a difference in harm that can be caused by those.
Actually, they do mess up your sexual function quite a bit, and they cause people to kill themselves. Antidepressant medication can sometimes worsen symptoms in a way that permanently fucks up people's lives in the form of them killing themselves. And also, we don't really do surgery on trans minors, and their fertility is usually not permanently affected by anything we would do for them in their childhood. And why are you thinking about the fertility of children? It's fucking creepy.
Also, like,
why?
Kids are going through with their parents extensive evaluation before making decisions like this. And again, like just to reaffirm what Lux said, there's lots of side effects that can affect both fertility and like permanent functioning. There's some like antipsychotics, which are used for not just psychosis. They're used for like depression, like really severe depression that can cause like permanent facial tics. Once you start getting them on the medication, even if you cease use of the medication, those facial tics continue for the rest of your life. So
clonazepam can cause permanent brain damage.
I don't deny that. I agree with you guys. Those have their risk, and we should be worried about that. But I don't think it's on the same level as gender medicine. And I feel
hold on, Ted, real quick. You don't think that an antidepressant worsening someone's symptoms to the point where they kill themselves is as big of a deal as children maybe producing fewer sperm?
Okay, well that's pretty. I mean, yeah, suicide is very sad, but the other ones like antidepressants can lower people's like sex drive, but that's not the same as removing fertility. So those aren't on the same.
But what evidence do you have that fertility is removed from children? And also, why does that matter? We have plenty of people in the world. And so my question is like, why would you say that we should discontinue the access to hormones rather than just making it part and parcel of the treatment that we preserve people's eggs so that they can remain fertile later? Like,
because
we're worried about children's fertility for some creepy fucking reason. So why are we not just preserving their fertility rather than denying them life-saving medication?
Because there's other concerns besides fertility, like injecting testosterone. That's the same thing as taking steroids. Like that's what bodybuilders take.
So
They
actually,
inject testosterone.
before we go off on this sidetrack, Ted, I just want to. This is a frustrating thing about this conversation because I feel like we're pretty chill today. I feel like you come in and we're interacting in good faith. I don't think there's any hostility yet. And it's kind of frustrating when you're like, oh, well, part of my problem with gender affirming care is that it has effects on fertility. We say, okay, well, why does that really matter? Here are examples of other treatments that affect fertility that you're not complaining about, that are probably, we'd agree, are important and life-saving for kids. Like there's things like chemotherapy, for example. It can have lifelong effects on fertility, but I bet we both agree kids should have access to that if they need it, right?
Yep.
It's frustrating when we point out this, and rather than going, you're right, maybe that's not a good reason to be opposed to this, you go, well, here's the other thing in my bag of tricks. Like, can we contend with the fact that that's probably not a good reason to be against gender affirming care? Can we agree on that? In and of itself?
Well, because I disagree with that, because losing fertility is a tragedy, but if someone has terminal cancer, their concern is saving their life. But I kind
So
of
is
reject
gender affirming care, Ted. That's the reason we're drawing that comparison, is because gender affirming care is life-saving medicine that causes people to live into adulthood. So their fertility is less of a concern than them living to adulthood, and that's why we give them the care as minors.
But there's evidence to suggest that kids will grow out of this if they are just allowed to resume their normal development.
So are you referring to the Canada study, or the Sweden study, the 80% desist number?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so that study has some very, very big methodological flaws, importantly, with how they're operationally defined being trans and who was considered to have gender dysphoria in that study. That is not a legitimate representation of how many people go on to desist from transition.
We've done long-term studies, and we do this in countries that have national health services like the UK, where you can look at, okay, the total number of individuals who were put on puberty blockers as teenagers, and pretty much 100% of them go on to take cross-sex hormones and are still trans 10 years later. So you are saying in one situation that, oh, the CAS report, it was acceptable for them to disregard all these poor quality studies, but I'm going to hinge my entire premise that most trans people desist, or most people desist from when they were teenagers or whatever, based on basically one shitty study that included people who simply stopped showing up to the clinic as desisters.
Yeah.
So you're being inconsistent here, and that's really frustrating. This is called a confirmation bias, where you are listening to studies that agree with you regardless of their quality, and you're ignoring studies that disagree with you, again, regardless of their quality and rigor.
So I think that there's no right way to be a man or a woman. So it
I agree.
doesn't tell you anything about somebody to call someone a man or a woman.
We agree on that. Why are you bringing that up?
Why is that relevant?
Because I feel like the solution to a kid who's distressed about being a man or a woman is to tell them there's nothing to be worried about. You are perfect as you are, just as you are. You are 100% a man or a woman, and that's exactly how you're supposed to be.
That's called conversion therapy.
I think conversion therapy is for gay people, not for
Conversion therapy is therapy with the intention of a trans person being cis or a gay person being straight. It's therapy with the intention of you not being queer.
Yeah, I feel like it's wrong to tell a gay person to force them to be straight, but I don't think it's wrong to tell somebody to just be how they were born, because that's the healthiest way for their body.
Ted, do you think that trans people didn't try to be what they were born? Do you think that most trans people didn't go through probably a significant period of saying, I'm going to try really hard to be what I was born?
Well, what does it mean to be born like a man or a woman? You can dress however you want to dress. I even think you can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself.
This is why Judith Butler says you become a woman, because you aren't born a woman. You're born a baby.
Yeah.
And then you go through probably a little girlhood, and then you become a woman.
I think a man can wear dresses. He can wear suits. He can paint.
I agree.
Nails,
I don't understand.
But he's always going to be a man.
Some of them,
Because that's
sure.
what man is.
There's lots of men who like to wear dresses and dress effeminately and virtually appear indistinguishable from cis women, but they consider themselves men. I'm not opposed to that. Gender affirming care isn't opposed to that. Trans rights activists are not opposed to that. I want people to live in whatever way they feel comfortable. If that's a man wearing a dress who says they're a man, great. If that's a person who is assigned male saying, actually, I think I'm a woman, and maybe they work on cars and they're covered in mud all the time, cool, live your best life. I'm not here to police who you are because I don't have access to the contents of your mind to be able to tell for sure whether or not you're really gay or really straight or really trans or whatever.
But see, this is where I would think it's anti-science, is that the concept of gender identity isn't really based in anything. So what does it mean to feel like a woman or feel like a man without appealing to sexist stereotypes?
Well, part of the problem is that I would say that definitionally, I think when we're talking about man and women in the social sense, we're talking about somebody's personal schema related to the female sex or the male sex. So like when we're talking about a gender identity, we are essentially talking about what this individual has pulled together from the expectations of all those social roles to a certain extent.
Right, but isn't it better just to teach them to hell with those social roles? Just be you, be
Yes.
a man or a woman.
Yes,
as you
that's
were
what
born.
we're advocating. Yes, the hell with those roles. If you want to be a little boy who plays with dolls, awesome. I support you and I love you for it. If you tell me you're actually a girl and you want to do things a different way, awesome. I'm here to support you for it. That is the trans rights position, is to support. By the way, this is literally what gender affirming care, the standards of care, indicate. There is no intended goal with gender affirming care. The goal is to support whatever outcome the patient decides or the patient deems from internal self-evaluation is the best for them. Whether that's being a boy who's a girl or being a boy who's a girl, being a boy who likes girl things, or ending up being someone assigned male who is a girl.
But like, what does it mean? Like, how can a boy be a girl? Like, what does that mean?
The person who has a gender identity that aligns with their schema of the female sex.
Right, but that just goes back to the social sexist stereotypes. Like girls like Barbie dolls, boys like football.
But you know that there are gender
so on.
nonconforming trans people, Ted. Like there are trans women who they were assigned male at birth. They grew up as little boys. They become women and they work on cars and they play softball and like they, still like they have sex with women. So they're gay too. Like they're not following stereotypes. Like the stereotype of a woman is you wear pink, you wear high heels, you wear makeup, you don't get dirty, you date men. But there are trans people who defy those stereotypes. So like, I don't really think it's reasonable to say that trans people are adhering to stereotypes when we are more likely in some ways to be willing to be gender nonconforming as we've transitioned.
Well,
right. We're talking about your personal schema of the female sex. So like if for me, that means like I don't wear dresses, right? Unless I'm going to like a wedding or a really formal event, I don't wear dresses. I like wearing jeans and I really like wearing black. That is what I tend to wear, right? So for me, this is how I express my femininity. This is a part of my schema for womanhood, right? But that's different from somebody else's. Like I have cousins who are very traditional conservative Christians who want to be a housewife. They have like 3 kids. God, that would be fucking a nightmare to me. So like I'm not denying that she's a woman because her definition of womanhood fits stereotypes better. But she definitely denies mine, but most people in my life don't, right? So it's like, it's not necessarily the fact that sexist stereotypes exist and influence our perception of gender and sex and ourselves is independent from whether or not we are saying you should fulfill these stereotypes.
Right, but I'm saying it's if you don't follow those stereotypes and if you don't base it on anatomy and biology, it's ultimately meaningless. It means nothing at all to be a man or a woman. It's self.
I mean, it's subjective.
A man is whoever identifies as a man.
Yeah, being subjective doesn't mean it's meaningless.
That doesn't mean it's meaningless. Yeah, like for each person, like what does it mean to be a good man? Like I'm not actually asking you the question. I'm just putting this out as a rhetorical thing, but like what it means to be a good man is to be honorable, to be loyal, to take care of your family, to provide, right? But those are all subjective to another person. A good man is like a man who takes care of his children and and does his wife's hair and shit like that. Like, so what does it mean to be a good man or a good woman? What does it mean to be a good person or whatever? But like the idea being subjective doesn't mean that it's entirely meaningless. And it doesn't mean that groups of people can't agree that, okay, yeah, like I agree that a good man is honorable and loyal or whatever. But like that doesn't mean that it's incoherent.
Ted, what does it mean to be hot?
Well, it's meaningless.
What does it mean for a woman to be hot?
It means attractive.
What does that
is
mean?
An attractive quality?
Beautiful.
Okay, that's you're using synonyms, but you're not describing what it actually means.
Right. I mean, there are subjective things, but
right. There are some, and it doesn't mean it's meaningless, right? You probably agree with a lot of people on if a certain person is hot or not, but you also probably have people who you think are hot, who your friends are like, ew, dude, you think that girl's hot? No fucking way. Like, that's a very normal thing. It's a subjective experience, but that doesn't mean it's meaningless. Like, there's so much overlap. We're all pulling from the same cultural pool of ideas, but how we internalize them is completely different because we all have different experiences.
Okay, but wouldn't you agree? Maybe it's not meaningless, but it's less useful than a biological definition. Like, especially with the sports leagues example or the bathrooms and locker rooms. Like, when I'm going to play sports with somebody, it doesn't matter to me what somebody feels in their head aligns with their identity. What matters is their biology, right?
You care more about their genitals than whether or not they're a good competitor?
It's not
That's
about
kind of
their
weird.
genitals. Like, every cell in your body is male or female. It's much more than
that's
genitals.
Fucking not true.
Yeah, that's not how that works. But no, red blood cells don't. I'm pretty sure it's either red blood cells or it's white blood cells. It's one of them, I believe, that doesn't carry
all your
any
sperm
DNA.
That have X's in them? Are those male cells? Are your sperms that carry an X chromosome and no Y chromosome? Are those male? Or yeah, like are those male or female cells?
Those don't even have all the chromosomes. Those only have half.
Oh, it's because most of your fucking cells don't have all the chromosomes in them. So you can't say, okay, yeah, sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent here. I feel like it's so difficult to have these conversations with you, Ted, because they meander so much. And this is why it's hard to take people seriously when we present like a strong argument and you're like, well, what about this other completely unrelated thing? And the fundamental premise of your question here today is to conflate philosophical concepts with that are very high level, like what does it mean to be a person? Like what does it mean to do? Yeah, those are philosophical questions, but you're comparing them and like drawing a direct parallel between a philosophical issue and a biological issue. And so you're claiming one has more merit than the other by means of being scientific, but you don't even understand the scientific process and the value of peer review. Like you don't actually care about what is scientific. You have displayed that repeatedly. So why should I assume like that is the like basis upon which this conversation should continue? Like we are ultimately, and you yourself, Ted, are driving us in a direction where we are primarily having a philosophical conversation about what it means to be a man or a woman.
Well, like, yeah, I don't really know where we're at now.
I just want to also say, Ted, that. Oh, can I just say one more thing before you go? Because this is a good conversation. I appreciate that you feel like this is a good period, because this is, I think, better than your last few conversations you've called in on. I would argue that the definition that is the most useful with regard to like biological sex or gender or whatever is very context dependent, right? Like when we discover a new species, I would argue that in that case, the biological definition of sex is the most useful thing, right? We're trying to understand the species. We're not trying to boil them down to this is all that exists. We might later find out that it's actually way more complex than we understand. But this heuristic of males have the small mobile gamete and females have the large immobile gamete is really useful for us when we discover new species, to understand, like, to start putting things into boxes so we can actually get an idea of what's going on with that animal, right? But when we're talking about human beings who have lives and lived experiences, who are affected by these definitions or these decisions or how we talk about people, I think in that case, we are talking about social stuff. We're talking about sociality, sociology, and almost never are we talking about biology. I don't know most people's chromosomes that I talk to. I don't know the genitals that they talk to. I make assumptions, and I'm probably right a lot of the time about those assumptions. There are some times that I'm not, and that's mostly what we're talking about. The times that we're not right, this affects people negatively, particularly trans people and to some extent men, but mostly women who are gender nonconforming, really. And so I'm not saying that there is no use for a biological understanding of sex or gender. I'm just saying that it is not useful when we're talking about people's lives and their well-being. But I appreciate you calling in, and I thank you for having a civil discussion with us, Ted. Call back another time, okay?
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Yeah.
Bye. Not gonna lie, I was so nervous going into that because it's been pretty hostile with Ted the last few times, but I think that was actually pretty good. So I'm like, whew.
Right, I took point on the hostility. It's okay.
That was good. I was trying to be so measured because I've seen that it was hostile the last few times, and so I was like, I'm going to be the reasonable one this time.
Yeah. Someone
also,
has to be.
Shout out to Jovan. The definition of woman as the that individual schema of the female sex, I think. So our chat, I know, is probably going to have some sensitive feelings about rationality rules, right? I saw him putting forth some definitions some time ago that I was like, wow, that's actually a really good definition. And I think basically Jovan's definition is that one boiled down into fewer words. It maybe takes some unpacking to talk about what is a schema, because probably most people don't understand that. Or maybe I'm being arrogant and talking down to you guys. I don't know. Tell me. Be like, shut up, you arrogant asshole.
Not the word that I would use. I mean, it is the one word to distill the concept of like what I would say with more words is like it's a person who understands this particular set of social roles and fits themselves into it in a particular place. Like, but yeah, a person's understanding of what gender means in their cultural context is what I understand schema to mean.
Yeah, like schema is also more broadly like the kind of network of things that are associated with a given concept. So like if I say blush, there's a schema associated with blush, right? There's like a natural reaction, there's makeup, there's different kinds of makeup. And I think when it comes to like gender identity, it works so well because we're talking about like things like biology, like biological sex, right? The anatomy, the phenotype of your standard female, like normatively speaking. But then it also includes things like sociology, because we acknowledge that there are like XY females, or there are people who have, through various medical reasons, like maybe certain parts of their body don't function the same as they normally would. And like that those people aren't not women as a result of that. And so it really has to do with like a network of things. But yeah, all right. Sorry. I know we have other callers on the line and I'm ranting. I was really happy with how that call went. And I wanted to like give ourselves a little pat on the back because I thought it was going to go so much worse.
We did it.
Hey there, everyone. We want you to check out our live shows. 6 days a week, 6 shows a week, 5 days a week, 6 shows. And also there are other channels coming. And this part is meaningless, but you could support this channel by watching the live shows, by checking out another episode. Tell the algorithm you want to stay here. You're not going to go off to some video of some super rich guy committing war crimes. You're going to stick around here and maybe you'll leave a comment. Or what else could they do, Eve?
They could head over to patreon.com/calltheline, right? Am I looking?
That's another thing. And they can
like, yeah.
And they can subscribe. No, you got it right. I got it wrong the first time.
And they could also comment. Yeah.